I'm positive that you got the fish pinned. You did your job. I'll have the angler get the fish under control. I'm never putting the line on the reel. That drives me nuts. Don't put the line on the reel. Pin the fish. You got it. I would say the lightest tippet outside of that terrestrial stuff when we're going super technical. Lightest tippet I'll run is 12. So I'm using 12-pound fluorocarbon, 16 or 20. You got that fish pinned. I'm confident you got it. I'm going to say, all right, man, I'm going to push into it now.
That was Mike Schultz talking about closing the gap on huge smallmouth bass, the native trout of the Midwest, today on the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, how's it going today? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. If you've been enjoying this podcast or listened to a few episodes recently, please take a moment to leave a rating and review for the show. This only takes a moment to leave a quick review and helps me to understand that I'm on the right track. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/review, and you can see how to leave a review on, I think we have a focus on Apple Podcasts there, but it'll be the same for most of your apps. Click that rating and review button. Thanks in advance if you've already left a review. Mike Schultz, the main man behind Schultz Outfitters and a leader in the smallmouth bass fly fishing field, breaks it all down today. We find out how Mike fishes for smallmouth given changing river flows and conditions, how to present the fly, and a bunch of other great stories that will help you hook up with more gigantic bass this year. Before we get started, let's hear from our sponsors. Sawyer offers a full line of modern and traditional products for oarsmen, canoeists, kayakers, and paddlers from all genres, providing unsurpassed function, performance, and beauty. Head over to wetflyswing.com/Sawyer to grab your set today. That's Sawyer, Sawyer, to get started right now. In today's world of mass-produced products, Stonefly Nets has reclaimed the tradition of handcrafted care with their custom wood landing nets. Please head over to wetflyswing.com/Stonefly to get your custom net today. That's wetflyswing.com/Stonefly to get started right now. So, without further ado, here is Mike Schultz from SchultzOutfitters.com. How's it going, Mike?
Good, brother. How are you?
Good. Yeah, thanks for coming on here. This has been, I always talk about some of these podcasts that have been a long time coming, but I've had your name's popped up quite a bit over the years, and finally getting you on here. I think maybe Greg Senyo was the last guy that your name popped up on the show. But yeah, we're going to dig into everything you have going with the focus on smallmouth bass. But maybe we can just talk about how you first got into fly fishing before we dig into all that.
Yeah, fly fishing. I was brought up here in Michigan, and the outdoors is a big part of kind of growing up here for a lot of kids. And I was always exposed to hunting and fishing as a kid. And as I, grew up, spent a lot of time, between school and hockey practices, watching OLN and some of those old school, shows with Andy Mill and those dudes. And I always thought that was really cool. And just happened to have a kid on my hockey team whose family was into salmon and steelhead fishing and fly fishing. And they took me up and went up north and fished, and that was pretty much it. Came back and immediately sought out the closest moving water, and in that moving water, I found smallmouth bass. So that's kind of how it all got rolling.
That's right. And you're in Michigan.
Correct. Yep. I'm in a small town just outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, called Dexter, and just live just off the Heron River, which is the river that the shop is on, about 40 miles downstream from where we're at up here living. But yeah, man, kind of been here my whole life, lived within, it's kind of lame, but I lived within the same watershed my whole life, even went to college here close to home. So
cool.
Yeah, homebody.
yeah, that's right. And no, this is awesome. I mean, we have a ton of listeners, definitely that part of the, the Great Lakes and all that. It's obviously steelhead is a big, we have a bunch of steelhead listeners as well. But yeah, we have smallmouth. I mean, I can't remember. I'm trying to think of the last person on here that mentioned, I'm trying to think of the quote. It was, I think it was Jerry Darkus said smallmouth bass was like the native trout of the Midwest. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I mean they're native, 100% wild. It's just really cool fish, and when you dig into them and kind of start peeling back the layers, there's a lot of little facets to the game, and they're always something that a fish that you go out and you learn something new more times than not. So yeah, really really rad fish.
Nice. And they get, yeah, we'll dig into some of the tips and kind of and the size and kind of how big some of these fish get. Because, I mean, the photos you guys all have on Instagram all look like, it looks like those photos where people are sticking the fish right out in front of them to make the fish look bigger. But, I mean, these are some huge fish, right? You're getting some pretty decent sized fish.
Yeah, I mean a 20-inch fish
Yeah.
is a big fish when it comes to smallmouth bass, especially in the environment that we target them. The fish are resident. They're pretty much all of them are locked between dams and stuff. So we're not really fishing for lake run fish, so to speak. But
Gotcha.
yeah, man. I mean, a 5-pound fish is a big fish.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some good photography, but when you go out and you tangle with these fish, a 20-inch fish is the bar, and the vast majority of the fish that we're going to be putting out there 19, 20 inches or bigger. Just something to be proud of as an angler.
That's cool. So you're in, I'm not sure that time frame the exact age when you got going, but I mean, you're fairly young. So, I mean, it sounds like, and how old are you now?
Yeah, I just turned 40 back in January.
You're a young buck. That's cool. So you're out there, you're going strong. I mean, how did the Schultz Outfitters? Because it seems like you guys are leading. I mean, your name comes up a lot when you hear fishing out in that area. How'd that come to be?
Yeah, I mean, I just been around a long time. I mean, really, started as a teenager, hanging out at the local fly shop, pretty much begging for a job, and eventually got the shot.
What was your local fly shop back then?
Oh, back in the day, it was a shop called Beuters Outdoors. It was in Northville, Michigan.
Beuters, like how do you spell that?
It's Bueters. And the proper pronunciation, if you don't live in Michigan, is beater.
Oh, wow.
But when John moved here, everyone called him Bueter. So he just got sick of telling people that it was beater and just said, screw it, I'm Bueter now.
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay, so you get going to the local shop, and that's pretty much it. You just like any of these great stores, you kind of put your time in and slowly. I mean, what year did you first open Schultz, or did it kind of start in your garage, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, Schultz Outfitters originally started as a guide service. So the shops that I had worked at previous to opening the store, I'd worked at a few different shops, and all of which are out of business at this time. But they were all primarily trout focused, lifestyle focused, Filson, Barber, Orvis, blah, 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 blah. That was kind of the beginning of it, and there never was really a hardcore angling shop. They were really always kind of focused on trout, and whatnot. And, I always thought that was kind of silly because they're sitting right here, you're selling trout flies, and you got, world-class smallmouth fisheries that at that time were, fairly untapped with the fly, which, really kind of gave me a blank slate to get to work.
That's amazing. Why do you think that's such an interesting part of it, right? Now, I don't know, I guess we go and we evolve, but why do you think, with smallmouth, such a resource there, people didn't try it out with the fly?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think a little bit, thinking about it over the years has to do with, just the modern human and time. I think a lot of people, it's really difficult, especially when you become of age to have children and get married, to be like, yo, I'm about to dip out for 3 days to go up north to trout fish. So it's just like anything, if you play baseball, you probably should go to the batting cages. If you're a golfer, you're going to go to the driving range. So I think that's what it kind of originally started out as, was just a way to get out and use that gear that you purchased, beyond that once or twice, or maybe if you're lucky 3 times a year, fishing trip up north. So that's kind of what it started as. And then obviously as time progressed, people get more busy and it's just a way to get your feet wet and fish. And then it was like, whoa, these things are rad,
Right.
And you go from there, from just the basic stuff of going out and just catching them to trying to figure them out and trying to catch big ones and consistently do it. And there's definitely some appeal to that.
Yeah. So basically, it's like that. And you can just look at generally, people up there were, trout fishing. I guess when you think of fly fishing, you think of trout. A lot of people do, and probably seeing, photos from Montana or around but people didn't even really realize like the smallmouth bass. Is that back in the day? Was that it? People didn't even realize the smallmouth bass fishery was what it was, or is it just people knew they were there? They just wanted to focus on trout.
Yeah, I think people knew that they were there. They just wanted to focus on trout. But, Michigan has great trout fishing. Don't get me wrong. And there are some amazing guides up north that know, every fish under every log. But when you look at, the trout fishery in Michigan comparative to going, out to Montana or Wyoming or Idaho, it's not even come close. It doesn't even come close.
No.
Sure, we have some giant fish, but we have low density for the most part.
Yep. That's it. Okay. Yeah, just trying to clarify for those that are, in your neck of the woods. It's interesting because, out west, we have smallmouth bass too. It's a different deal. But, they're a super fun fish to catch and really aggressive. And, I've known for quite a while how cool smallmouth are. So I think it's fun. It's going to be cool to dig in today because I think we're going to focus on just some tips to help somebody find some more fish. And I know you've had a few podcasts out there in the past, so I'll hopefully try to bring some something new to the game today. But yeah, maybe we just start out, to there, like, the water you're fishing. So can you just talk about maybe your home typical waters you're fishing? And I'm assuming we're talking mostly rivers. Is that the deal here?
Yeah, I'm 100% river guy. I think one thing about our area here is, smallmouth are fun to catch anywhere. But, to me, going out onto a giant river and just hucking a lead-eyed fly and stripping it back is kind of like doing it in a lake, so it's not that appealing to me. Whereas what we have here is we have fairly small waters, very intimate settings. At this present time, it's pretty uncommon to come across other people on the river. Cool. Will that change over time? Possibly. You're definitely seeing more traffic with rafts and the ultralights that are flooding the market. But that's one thing that's really cool about where we're doing it is the environment in which these fish are in. Obviously, we all know that plays a huge role in the fish and how they behave and their food sources and whatnot. So, having said that, our rivers are really set up really well for attacking them with a fly rod. They're fairly shallow. When we're talking about cubic feet per second, how much volume's coming down these rivers, I would say on a normal spring, a river would be pretty big if it got up to 2,000 CFS.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's decent.
So 500 to $1,000 is money, to make things really easy on everybody. And then as they get low or high, many challenges come into play, which makes it at times difficult. So, the rivers are just set up really well and they're in close proximity. So there's a lot of water in this area in southeastern Michigan. The shop is set up in the hub and you kind of shoot off, 15 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes away and you're fishing, tons of water.
That's what I was just thinking about. So for somebody who hasn't been up there and without giving out secrets or anything, is there, is there a kind of a main waterway or something you can just to put us in the direction of where you guys are at? Or what city are you near? Where are you guys at?
Yes. So where the shop would be close, the largest town close to the shop would be Ann Arbor, where U of M is at, University of Michigan. So our hub, all of us live within the Heron River watershed. So all the guides, they were all kind of centrally based around Dexter, Howell area. And then we're able to shoot off from there. So, we'll rely on half a dozen different rivers.
Okay.
During peak season, we'll have 5 guys going every day, and you're on 6 rivers that, one river might have 50 miles of fishable water. The other one might have 80 miles of fishable water. So you're able to manage that. You're able to stick and move. And when you really dialed into flow rates and have an intimate knowledge of these rivers and how they behave at certain times of year, which only comes with experience, you're able to kind of, be on the best water at the best time.
Gotcha. Okay. So these are all Huron River. These are all tribs, these different size tribs to that river.
No. They're just their own rivers. Yeah.
Okay.
Their own piece of water. Yeah. They're They're all small. So yeah, the Huron is just kind of the main one that the shop is on. We all live off of.
I see.
And then there's, 5 other rivers that are spread out to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west around here.
Gotcha.
That we just shoot off to.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And are you guys fishing what is one main one that everybody would know about that everybody fishes?
The Huron. I mean, that is the one that most
main.
people. Yeah, that. I mean, I'll rattle them off if you want.
Yeah. Rattle them off. This will help, I think, just guide for, especially if somebody's new. I know we've had a few people, kind of on the West Coast that kind of had some questions about, they're heading that way and stuff. So I think this would help that person.
Yeah, no doubt. So the Raisin River, the Grand River, the Shiawassee, the Flint, and the Huron.
Okay.
So those are the. And the Kalamazoo.
And the Kalamazoo. Okay. So now, and I know this depends on water and all the variables, but if you were to go out fishing, right now today, and I'm not even sure if this is a great time, but where would you be potentially heading? And knowing that this podcast will probably come out, but once we get it, it'll probably come out in a month or 2 from now. So it'll probably be.
Yeah, I mean, dude, we're on there's 6 different rivers, and I would say today I'm off today. I got a scheduled day off. I got to get ready to rock for demo days. But we'll have 4 other guides on 3 different rivers.
Oh, right.
It's all about water. It's all about the flow. So right now we're in a drought. Like it's insane.
Oh, wow.
Like we're running like August programs, when we should be running like 6-inch streamers and, aggressively fishing frogs to the bank.
So what is August when you think of a good, like it is now, it's drought. So if you're thinking we're talking middle of summer type fishing, what is so again, you might fish all those rivers, but is there one you'd focus on, or maybe we could talk about the techniques you'd use for the lower water?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny because, I got now pushing, 15, 20 years of data, and every year's different, especially the last 5 years. It's just been insane how, the program has changed. And like, you look at things that you did in 18, 19, like I was looking the other day, a river that we got right here, the Huron, where I'm at. I got a little thing that popped up like a Facebook memory or whatever, and I clicked on it and looked at the date. And then I looked back and looked at the flows, and the river was at 2,500 CFS. Wow. So we had an amazing day. Right. And the same day this year, 160.
Dang. So that's amazing.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just whatever Mother Nature gives you, and you just need to have your finger on the pulse of that. And, but right now, if I was going out fishing, I would be throwing fairly small to, my standards, 2.5, 3-inch hair minnows, like just like the most simple old school hair minnow. And you're pretty much, I'm going through water and I'm rotating my water like every 2 or 3 days. I'm going down the beat that I was, there 2 or 3 days before. Mm-hmm. And the way that these fish set up this time of year is they're just coming off spawning. They're super duper predictable. And nothing is going to move those fish except water. And if we haven't had the water, exactly where they're going to be. I mean, I wouldn't say exactly what rock or piece of wood, but I would say in a 30-foot circumference,
amazing,
that big ass fish is going to be somewhere in there where it was 2 or 3 days before. So you're kind of hunting fish. And, for me with guiding, preparation is so huge. And, I'm mentally going through kind of my day when we get in these conditions, kind of checking the box as I move down the water and visiting fish, that I know addresses.
That's crazy.
That's the game. So this time of year for me, it's like I book a ton of single angler trips. That's like what I really enjoy doing is one guy. And what that allows me to do is set up, properly, not having to worry about a back angler and how they're going to be shut out from the angles. But yeah, that's kind of the game. Is the angles.
Gotcha. And you're using, it sounds like you're fishing with a boat. Is there a way to do this without a boat, or do you have to have a boat?
No, you can do it with a boat. Without a boat, you just have to be super smart, with your approach. I mean, I think that's one thing about smallmouth bass that, growing up and seeing like some of the things that you read or hear people say, it's like, oh, they're easy, It's like, dude, you're nuts. You're absolutely nuts. You come and try to catch a giant fish that's sitting in the 18 inches, 2 foot of water, crystal clear, good luck. good luck. You better
Yeah.
have some thought. So yeah, this can be done on foot. It's just great care and approach. And Jeff Liskay, I'm sure
Yeah.
you've had,
Yep.
Jeff always says, think before you cast,
Yeah.
and it's like, it's so important. It's so simple and sounds so silly, but like most people just get in robot mode and just, go down the river and just, laceration nation going
That's
down the
right.
damn thing. So, I mean, it's just like any fish, any trout or any, trophy fish, you gotta put some thought into it, and your approach is important.
So if you think of that fish, let's say we got that 20-inch fish. I'm not sure if you're on the Huron River or whatever, but you're in some shallow water. You got a little 18-inch water, and it's a big fish. How would you kind of attack that whole situation? Take us to that situation.
Yeah, it just depends on the time of year, and I do a lot of obviously trial and error,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can get them in, and you get like an overcast day, or you got a little bit of wind, maybe a little ripple on the water. You can get away with some, more aggressive approach to that fish. But I feel that, anybody out there that's targeting big smallmouth and shallow water, you're going to be better off fishing them on the surface, I believe, giving them a profile versus something to, so yeah, I mean, anything from an angle where you're shooting, short of the fish, but kind of not right in front of it, just off to the side of the fish. And you could be aggressive with a hair minnow or something where you're working it across, or even more stealthy approach where you're dropping down to like a 6-weight and you're using a terrestrial with a trout tapered line. And that's just product of their environment. Like, one river has a ton of bait in it,
Right.
where the other river doesn't have a ton of bait. And that fish is going to key in on other food sources, maybe whether it's crayfish or, right now, the way the waters are setting up, I would say in the next week, we're going to have pretty ridiculous terrestrial fishing, where you're sight fishing to these fish.
Are these like hoppers and ants and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I would go more towards
beetles?
dragonflies.
Oh, right.
Dragonflies. Yeah, that's what they really get into. Like the other day, there was a bunch of, I think they're Dorners, dragonflies, or they're like the white or the blue and green ones. They just kind of showed up. And looking back, I saw them and I'm like, man, I got to look at my pictures from last year. And June 3rd was a day that was just an epic day that I went out and client on my bow crushed a bunch of big fish on terrestrials, all sight fishing.
Wow.
One river, you could throw that hair frog at them or that hair minnow, and you're throwing straight 20-pound rope, to the fish. Like you're just using, saltwater fluorocarbon. And then another river, you might be, it sounds crazy. And you would have told me this 5 years ago, I'd have laughed at you. And other rivers, you might be dropping down to 3X, 2X, and you're dropping a terrestrial on them with a 12-foot leader, so, every river's different. Every section of river is different. People have probably heard this on podcasts before with me, but like, you got to look at all these rivers as rivers within rivers. Like if there's a dam, with a reservoir below it, or a dam with another dam, like it's a whole different ecosystem. It needs to be approached that way.
Okay. And again, I guess just for ease on this one, thinking of the Huron, is that one, I mean, is that one pretty variable within that river as well? That could be depending on if it's overclassed or clear, does the water fluctuate quite a bit? Clarity?
The water fluctuates quite a bit, but it's again, it's a river within a river. So up where I live in Dexter, it's crystal clear. It's coming off five main lakes that the river runs through, a chain of lakes, which has zebra mussels in it.
Oh, wow.
And so everything from that down is crystal clear until you get to a creek that when it rains, it gets muddy. Whereas where the store is at, it's a totally different environment down there. And then if you move down past the next two reservoirs, it's like clay banks, muddy. It's a river within a river within a river. It's pretty wild. So, having said that, the Huron, there's a section of river that's less than a mile from my house that is the only catch and release bass water in the state.
Huh.
So back in 1989, some local anglers had the, vision of creating or protecting, I should say, because the fish were here already. It's not like they created a trophy fishery, but they had the, vision to have the state set up some sort of test experiments and stuff on the river. And then it was never changed back. So in 1989, they changed it to catch and release for all bass. And, I've talked to people within the Department of Natural Resources, like, yeah, that was supposed to get turned back, like after 10 years, but we just left it. They didn't want to do the paperwork.
Right.
So that river, the Huron, that section of the river, a very small piece, let's call it 20 miles, super technical. Like if you're not on it, you're not catching.
No kidding. And that's just because it's just hammered by lots of fishermen.
I would say not hammered by lots of fishermen. I would say just old fish that haven't, they just don't get capped. They just grow to their max. And it's crystal clear. It's fairly shallow. And then once you get to around this time of year, right around Memorial Day, the canoe livery starts. And you have fish that are happy and just kind of out in the middle of the river doing their thing. And then now you got 150 canoes and kayaks and tubes rolling over them a day. So we kind of vacate, or you're smart about it and you know where to launch and where to be at the right time. But those fish all get pushed off, and then they just become either, tucked up in log jams or feed at night. They just totally change their habits just due to human interaction.
And now let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. In today's world of mass-produced products, Stonefly Nets has reclaimed the tradition of handcrafted care with their custom wood landing nets. Stonefly starts the design process by selecting wood for the handle based on a number of key factors, including grain pattern and depth, but they don't stop there. This piece of art is accentuated by strips of hardwood that complement and accentuate the handcrafted handle. To be honest, I have never been a huge net guy, mainly because I didn't feel like my old collapsible net was easiest to use and was not easy on the eye, if you know what I mean. The Stonefly net not only looks beautiful, but has high-quality netting that is easy on the fish and will last for years to come. Stonefly's goal is to create a unique custom classic wood net that's second to none and can be customized for a little extra touch. For Ethan, the founder of Stonefly Nets, fly fishing has always had a traditional feel going back to fishing the 3-weight bamboo rod with his great-grandmother. When Ethan designs a custom net, it's his hope that others will create amazing lasting memories for years to come. Please head over to wetflyswing.com/stonefly to get your custom net now. That's wetflyswing.com/stonefly, STONEFLY, to get started right now. Okay, now let's get back to the show.
Okay, well, this gives us a little perspective on it. It sounds like the key here, like you said, is there's a lot of variation. Probably the best thing would be if somebody's come up there to check in with you guys and maybe just get a heads up on the rivers and how things are fishing. Is that?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's, there's a lot of figure it out yourself when it comes to this kind of stuff. Okay. It's like you can tell people whatever, but if they don't know what you know, it's going to be a rough ride. There's going to be a learning curve. It's fishing. It's real. You can't fake it. You got to go out and put the time in.
That's right. That's right. Okay, cool. Well, this is good. Well, I think the recommendation I think this is a good one is to come in, stop by, get it, maybe a day guide trip or whatever, or maybe whatever they need, whatever somebody can afford, but get a trip with you guys just to get things dialed in. And then they could always go out later on their own, right? Is there some pretty good public water access out there?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, in Michigan, the state, we own the people of Michigan own the bottom of the river.
Oh, wow.
So you can jump in at any bridge and metro parks and state parks and whatever. Having said that, I think, kind of rewind a little bit. It's like you could we pretty much give away everything. I always tell people that. It's like we tell you what fly to use. Your leader builds, your lines, pretty much the whole program is laid out there. If you want to do a little research on other podcasts and this one today, you can find pretty much exactly how we're doing it. But unless you're out doing it and seeing it and understanding it and, being the guy that's standing up all day rowing and finding out where they're at and, their habits and whatnot, it's going to be a little bit of a rough ride.
Yep.
It is. Yes, if you can afford a guide to go out for a day or two, you're going to have a much more successful trip, especially if you're attacking these fish on a fly rod.
That's right. Cool. Well, we'll be directing people your way for sure as we get in. But let's just jump into a few more of these. And you mentioned, before we get into a few of these other questions I had for you, as far as the catch and release, I'm just curious. So are the fish a lot bigger there, like way much bigger, or are they is it kind of normal?
Just where there's 20-inch fish, there's 21-inch fish. They're big.
Yeah.
I would say, the Huron has, especially in that section of water, population density is not that high.
So it hasn't helped. Like the catch and release hasn't really made this a trophy bass fishery.
No, and that's the environment. What's the food source? I think it's it's kind of at max capacity. It is what it is.
Where can you find the biggest fish, or do all these rivers have big fish?
Oh, they all have big fish. Yeah, there's no doubt. We definitely, as a guide service, have waters that are a little bit easier to fish for beginners. People that aren't the greatest casters or are learning, getting into the sport. And then you have other stuff that's super technical. You'd be an idiot to take two people down it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You just you're watching your back cast. The angles of approach are totally different. You're casting right down the middle of the river due to obstructions and whatnot. So, it's pretty neat. We have, kind of programs for everybody. If you're just getting into it, you can go out and whale on a bunch of small fish and work different techniques and whatnot. And if you're in the mindset that you want to catch a trophy fish, we have programs for that.
Okay. Well, let's just jump into real quick here on the gear stuff. So just for somebody new to it, I mean, what is their rod, reel, line? What are we looking at? Is this a kind of a normal, like 6-weight sort of program?
Yeah, I would say, every day of the year, there's going to be 7 and 8 weight rods in the boat.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the bread and butter. I would say, the 6-weight definitely comes out for certain programs, but that's more of a presentation thing, not really fighting the fish. You're better off with a 7 or an 8-weight fighting the fish. But yeah, just the lighter line 6-weight. You can put a trout taper on it or whatever. You're laying out a nice greasy cast. It's not splatting down with a 33 to 43 foot bass taper. You're laying something out there. So the 6-weight comes into play. But yeah, it's pretty much it's pretty simple. We're going to be running floating lines. They're going to be bass bug tapered lines. Sometimes we run like a Titan taper, which is like a 33 foot head. Sometimes we'll run the bass bug, which is a 43 foot head, just an elongated version of that line. That's our floating setup. Again, I touched on it, but like if you want to break it down and get real nerdy and you're trying to trust real fish to these fish, you might kick it to like an MPX or something like that from SA. And then on the subsurface game is pretty much done primarily with intermediates. So we're going to use Scientific Anglers tropical clear tip intermediate during the summer, even now when it's pretty warm. That's going to be a line that the front section is clear, and that is an intermediate line, and then it'll go to a floating running line in the rear, and that one has the same exact taper as the bass bug, so it's like a same 43 footer. And then early in the season and late in the season, we'll use the same exact tapered line, but it's in one called a Titan taper. A full intermediate, sonar Titan full intermediate. And that's pretty much just going to be used early and late season. And that is due to the composition of the line. The line is built for cold water, has that rear runner is intermediate. So usually early and late in the season, the water is a little bit higher and you want to get flies down. But what's cool about that whole family of lines is the taper profile is the same. So you're not, switching rods with clients and giving them a totally different taper to be like, here, now learn this after you've used, that rod for 2-3 hours. So that family of lines is kind of, what we build our program off of. And, all the guides run that stuff. So 7 and 8 weight intermediates, floating lines, reel really doesn't matter. I just use I use light reels like Nautilus X frame. Just keep it all light. You're going to be casting all day. This isn't a saltwater trip where you're standing on the bow, making a few shots a day. This is, you're chewing up water a lot of times, especially when the water's high. So you want something light in hand that the angler can throw all day.
Gotcha. Okay. And just for early, late season. So what is, when is that? When is the early season? When is the late season?
Yeah, so we pretty much get on it as soon as we can. So as soon as the ice is gone and the river's breaking up, we're out there, fishing middle of the day, peak attempts. So that's usually beginning of March.
Okay.
On a normal year, we'll get cranking guiding March 15th.
Yep.
Kind of have the way the shop's set up. We have a series of events and shows that kind of lead up to that mid-March, and then mid-March we pack the show trailer up, and it's like, woo, it's game time. So we're out there with the chainsaws, cutting floats out, and trying to catch fish. But that time of year, you're really right in the middle of the day. I mean, you got like a 2-hour window, maybe, if you're lucky. But usually around the end of March, it starts turning around, and get some warm days, and fish will kind of get off having to fish them with dumbbell-eyed flies and doing a lot of like dredge and jig techniques. And then it'll move into more of a swim fly bite where they're it's visual takes, and you're working flies that are very entertaining versus kind of getting into that robot mode where you're just dragging lead around, which is, it's like watching paint dry. But, but yeah, so that's kind of how it goes. And then, so that's pretty much water temp oriented, right? So we've caught them on fly in close to freezing water, 34, 35 degrees. It's possible. They eat every day.
Yeah.
But when it really takes off, 40, we get happy. 45, we're stoked. By 45, it's like they're eating swim flies. You're getting visual eats. You're seeing fish active for usually a longer period during the day. You might get a 4 or 5 hour window if you're lucky. So that usually fires up beginning of April. And, by April 15th, we're pretty happy people, and it's rocking and rolling, and we're kind of hit our stride.
That's it. And right now, as we're talking, we're kind of in mid-May going into June. So this is just, this is prime time right now.
Yep. Prime time. So we have, we're ahead of schedule still. It kind of stalled out a little bit. I would say at one point we were probably 3 weeks ahead at least. We had fish going on frogs on March 30th this year. Wow. And up until this year, the earliest I ever caught one on frog was April 23rd. So we were way ahead of schedule. But yeah, right now I would say out of the 6 rivers, I would say half of them are post spawn. The other ones still have some fish lingering around beds, some of the smaller fish that kind of go late. But yeah, it's full on game time. We're just waiting for Mother Nature to give us a little bit of rain. It'll even be better. But yeah, it's good. We're catching every day.
That's it. Yeah. So a little rain, that's what you always need. That kind of gets them going and gets them more active and allows you to, get closer to the fish. I mean, when you talk about these big fish, so if we're just thinking big fish, what's for somebody I know, obviously talking to a guide and being there, but any tips on finding some of those big fish if somebody's, new to the water? Like habitat and stuff like that.
Yeah, you'll notice like you once you find a few and you see that there's things that they like. They obviously like structure, right? So a mature, and let me rewind a little bit. Some of the rivers that we guide, these fish lock into these areas and they're staying there, right? They're not. They're like get into an area like we're talking rivers that have mature wood and Then you have other rivers that just get these massive blowouts, just wipe the bank, and they're just ever changing, right?
Yep.
And those fish, it all goes back to the fish is a product of its environment. So on some of these rivers that have these mature jams and whatnot, you'll find fish that you'll catch year after year in the same area. Where other rivers, there's not as much consistency with that. You see them once or you catch them once, and you never see them again in those spots. But if you're fishing a river that you're going to be most likely fishing on foot, having a little bit of depth nearby, they don't need much. I used to think they needed a lot more, but you find a spot that's 3 or 4 feet deep. You find a spot with mature log jam. You find a spot that has, sun and shade, and eventually you'll find a big fish, and that biggest fish will be in the spot you would think it would be in. But it's also the time of year, right? So like right now with the water being super low, we're finding the biggest fish at the tail outs. Like you're almost like after like one day of guiding, and you're like, all right, man, on to the next spot. And you make 2 pushes of the oars and you look down, the fish is like sitting in 10 inches of water on the far back end. You're like, damn, I got to adjust. Wow. I can't be pushing out that early. I got to wait. fish it out completely. And then other days, you know, the water's high, they're right up at the front, just gobbling up every, you know, thing that comes over that lip. So it's all about, I could tell you all you want to hear, Dave, but you know, when it all comes down to it, is just putting your time in, like with anything, and figuring it out for each time. And again, I learn new stuff every day.
That's right. And are you guys with the boat? First of all, on your boat, what are you using? What's your boat of choice?
Yeah, so everybody on staff, when we are working, our work boats are a Clacka Craft Headhunter 360s. So skiff style.
Skiff style. Yep.
Yeah, 15 footers. You don't need the, you know, full Mackenzie out here. There's really nothing crazy to run in our area on any of our rivers. I want something that's fairly narrow. As I told you, the rivers are fairly small, so you get into some hairy spots with log jams and whatnot. I want something that's light. You know, I can drag that boat around. I can drag it over a log jam. If I got, you know, old dude I want to put on the bank and be like, dude, I got to get it over this log jam, I can do it myself.
Yeah. That's huge.
So yeah, Clacka's always been good to me. Other great boats out there, you know, to get into. I actually have an Adipose that I run when I go goof off with my buddies. It has like casting decks on it and stuff. You know, so can't really put clients up on that. But
no,
but yeah, those are kind of the primary boats. I need something light. I need something you know, durable. We grind these things into the ground. I sell my boat pretty much every year or two.
All right.
Just because the rivers, that's what they do to them, and I hate fishing out of rafts. They're just uncomfortable and whatnot. So. But yeah, man, drift boats, small drift boats, put a little 4-horse kicker on them if you need to get around and scoot around with put a little Yami on the back and rip around. But, yeah, man, that's our setups. You know, well, I think one thing that I've worked for other, you know, I worked at, you know, lodge and whatnot. And I'd say one thing that's really unique about our team and the guides is we all pretty much run the same program. We're all on the, you know, same lines, same leader builds, you know, everyone's got their own unique flies and whatnot, but same boats. You know, it's pretty cool to have everybody on the same page and agree that these are the best tools for the job.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And when you guys are out there, are you pretty much anchoring up on water and kind of fishing it hard, or are you guys moving more?
No, the boat is moving the whole time.
Yeah.
The oars, the guy on the sticks plays a huge role in the whole program of how you're dropping the boat down and how you're positioning the boat. No surprise there from someone that's into it, but I do see occasionally anglers fishing around here and they're just, you know, having a good time. It's all good. But like, you look at the way that they're approaching specific spots or the speed in which the boat is moving, and you're like, that dude ain't got a prayer.
Yeah.
You know, you know, it's all good. Everyone's out there for different reasons, but if you want to catch the big ones, you really got to be on your and, knowing where to have the boat and the speed in which it's moving. And then it changes. It changes with the flies. It changes with the presentation. You know, what do you do after you hook that giant fish? You know,
right.
It's just a lot of factors.
That's right. Yeah. How do you do that? So you get this trophy fish, this giant fish on, well, what's the secret? I mean, take us there. How is that person landing that fish?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, and this is something that I always preach, you know, I've done a lot of, I've taken the techniques that I use on these small rivers and used them on bigger rivers, you know, just breaking the river down and not looking at it as a giant river, looking at it as a smaller piece of water and kind of dissecting it. But I think the biggest thing, you know, and again, no surprise for other people to listen to other podcasts, is just the angle, right? So the way that smallmouth bass eat the fly, you can hook them when you're throwing it off the side of the boat. You can hook them when you're throwing some upstream, you know, bringing it down. You know, like Kelly Gallup, Bob Linseman, modern streamers for trophy trout, that kind of mentality or that style. It works. You can get them to eat, but getting the positive hook set into them and getting, you know, them pinned is very difficult from off the side, and very difficult when the fly's moving downstream. It's something to do with the way that they eat, the way that they take the fly, and that you can, don't get me wrong, you can hook them that way, but it's going to take an experienced angler that kind of understands, you know, how long you need to wait, and just, you know, there's a lot of factors there as well. But the biggest thing I always tell people is, you're fishing that fly. It doesn't matter if it's a frog, it's a terrestrial, it's a boogle bug, it's a game changer, it's a swinging D, whatever you're fishing, you're going to be much better off if you're fishing on a 45 down or at times even greater. It's smaller waters. It's more stealthy to kind of approach them that way. The spots that we're fishing, even with high water, are fairly small. You're not tracking these flies at great distance. You're getting the fly out there. You're fishing it for, 6, 7 strips at the most, sometimes 2 or 3, depending on, what's going on. And then when the fish does eat it, the vast majority of the time, a smallmouth, if it's eating it on a 45 down, is going to grab it. It's going to turn, and it's either going to go, a big fish is going to go right into the wood, or a smaller fish is usually going to come across the bow and go to deeper water in the middle. So you're going to get a positive hook set. The fish is going to get the slack out of the line if there is any slack in it for you. And if you got them at that point, pretty much, if you get a positive hook set. Yeah. So what I do most of the time with these big fish is I will, obviously I'm paying it. I'm a stander. I stand the whole day. I watch the flies work. I mean, it's like I'm getting paid to fish. Like that's the part I enjoy the most, seeing the eat, seeing the fish react to the fly. So sometimes I feel guilty being out there because I don't have to do any of the work except row the boat, and I get get all the benefit of the visuals. But what I'll do is you set the hook. I'm positive that you got the fish pinned. You did your job. I'll have the angler get the fish under control. I'm never putting the line on the reel. That drives me nuts. Don't put the line on the reel. Pin the fish. You got it. I would say the lightest tippet outside of that terrestrial stuff when we're going super technical, lightest tippet I'll run is 12. So I'm using 12-pound fluorocarbon, 16 or 20. You got that fish pinned. I'm confident you got it. I'm going to say, all right, man, I'm going to push into it now. And I will close that gap to the fish. Anglers stripping down, keeping tight. And then I'll, a fish of that caliber. Yeah, it's great to have them jump and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But like, I want to get that fish in the bag as soon as possible. I'm not going to let them run and take you into a log jam or wrap you on something, and then we're like, oh man, that was a giant. And we didn't have a chance to, you can mess around with the small ones. Let's get the big ones in the bag. So yeah, that's pretty much one of the major, secrets, I guess, to it is get the fish pinned, get the fish under control, and then use the boat to close the gap and steer that fish away from obstructions.
Yeah, get them away. And then, so I guess going back to that 45 degree, so you're talking about just kind of 45 down across and kind of swinging it or letting it swing slowly. Talk about that. Are you swinging it? Are you stripping it? What are you doing?
Yeah, so it just depends on the time of year and how much water is in the river. But early season, and when it's high, you might have these little cuts and little soft areas. We refer to them as couch water.
Yep.
And those fish are going to be really active, where that fly hits the water and you might get 1 or 2, and it's just going to get clobbered, right? Then you have other situations where you're going to work the fly longer in the presentation. But it's still not going to, you're still not retrieving it at great distance, right? You're more working it in the zone. So for those of you guys out there that are familiar with the swinging D, which is one of the flies templates that we fish a lot, that fly isn't a fly that you're really retrieving back as much as you're kind of bopping it around a small area. And then what the guide is doing or the rower is doing is they're positioning you to maybe drop that fly into a zone. Versus you're not really swinging it, but you're just kind of keeping it in the zone and moving it, because that fly has a neutral buoyancy to it. So it'll just kind of flutter around, and it's real unpredictable. And you're kind of walking that fly into a spot. It could be a log jam that's, angled towards the middle of the river downstream, or you got a nice little bubble line, or maybe you got some, when the water's low, you might have some, a collection point of, seeds and leaves and all kinds of stuff. And you're walking that fly across that. And they'll come out from under that stuff and just dust it. And, usually in those situations, they're just turning and going right back into the woods. You're following through with a, low rod angle, stripping down on them and just trying to turn them and get them out of that stuff. But it's bass fishing,
Yeah, it's bass fishing, right?
It's bass fishing. You're bass fishing on moving water with fly tackle. And, if you want to let them run around, you're not going to land as many.
No. So
especially the big ones.
Keep them under control. And you also mentioned no line on the reel. So that's basically just because you're trying to close the gap and you couldn't reel that fast. Is that why you do that?
Yeah, there's really no reason. I mean, what are you going to let the thing, pull drag on your, I mean, they're more of a down and dirty bulldog fighter, kind of, they're not going to go on runs. One exception to that would be when you're hooking them in really skinny water on those terrestrials. That's when the game is like, it's a different level. Like you got to be on it, because a fish like that on 3X, just zipping across 10 inches of water. I mean, you ain't turning it. Half the time when I hook them, I jump out of the boat.
Yeah.
If I'm out fun fishing, it's like, dude, just get you out of the equation. I'm going in.
And now let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Sawyer offers a full line of modern and traditional products for oarsmen, canoeists, kayakers, surfers, and paddlers of all genres, providing unsurpassed function, performance, and beauty. They design and handcraft every product in the USA, ensuring everything they make is from the highest quality materials with careful attention to detail. I've been using Sawyer products for a long time now, which is why I'm definitely excited to share them with you on the podcast here. I've been down some crazy technical whitewater and mini fishing adventures that put me in places that were where I had to make a good move. And I love the design, the power, the performance, and always knowing that I can count on that stroke, even when you need to make, that one to get past the rock or whatever. You can always count on Sawyer for that. And you can count on them as well. Sawyer products are designed by paddlers, oarsmen, and surfers alike to fully meet your performance needs. Pick up one today and experience the feel of water. Head over to wetflyswing.com/Sawyer to grab your set today. That's Sawyer, SAWYER, wetflyswing.com/Sawyer to get started. Okay, now let's get back to the show.
That's kind of the fun thing. I know we kind of have a fun river we do. And there'll be times we'll be out there just messing around, jumping in with the fish, swimming with them, kind of watching them underwater with the snorkel and mask. You guys ever do anything kind of crazy, all that stuff? Is it kind of, do you have any of those opportunities to get in with the fish?
You could.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. But the time of year that you'd want to do
it's cold.
early season and it's freezing.
Yeah, that's right. I'm talking about a river that's, like, whatever it is, 60, 70 degrees. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. No doubt.
Different deal. Okay, and then on the leader, just quickly go through. You mentioned 12-pound fluorocarbon. Is the leader itself, the full leader, important? Talk about how you put that together, what you use.
Yeah. So obviously everyone's got their their ways of building the leader. I mean, if you can do whatever you want, but what I do is I run off the intermediates. I'll run a 30-pound butt section of fluorocarbon. Like I said, I use the saltwater stuff that's fairly stiff and abrasion resistant. So I'll go 30, 25, 20, and then my go-to would be 16. Yeah. And that's just kind of my setup. If I wasn't using 16, I was going down to 12, I would just tie the 12 off the 20 and call it done. But back in the day when I was guiding, total beginners and stuff, a short leash would be like 4 foot.
Okay.
Nowadays I'm probably in the 7 to 8 foot range most of the time.
Yep. 7, 8 foot.
On my build, and okay. I'm hand building all of it. I'm I think leaders are great, if you're going trout fishing and dry fly fishing, but I think that's one part of the game that doesn't matter if you're saltwater fishing, you're musky fishing, you're smallmouth fishing, you need to build your own leaders. Makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Why is that? Because I've always done that as well. And I'm not sure I was just taught that way, but why is building a leader better than just buying one off the shelf?
Oh, because the variation in flies you're going to be fishing. So, you throw a hair frog, it's going to be different, that's going to act different than if you're throwing a boogle bug. It takes a different leader to do that. If you really want to fine tune it, don't get me wrong, you can go out and saw away and have fun as long as it turns over. There's a lot of people out there with that school of thought. It's like, as long as it turns over, I'm happy. It's like, but if you really want to be nerdy about it and dial it in, each fly is unique weight, and each line's different. Each rod's going to behave different. And you're just going to you'll be able to, it's like fly tying. It's like, do you tie flies? No. Okay. Well, you're going to be limited.
Yeah.
Right. If you tie flies, you can do some stuff. That's a big part of the game.
Yeah. I want to talk about that just quickly on the flies as well. So, You've mentioned a number of different flies, but is there a specific, if you are a fly tyer, like on the design of some of these flies? Maybe we could dig into some of those swimmers. What would be a good pattern? Let's say you got water, I guess it's shallower, or fish are more active. What fly are you putting on there? And talk about the design of one of those flies.
Yeah, so if you want to get into the, what I think is the interesting stuff is just kind of the modern swim flies, right?
Yeah.
So, you're tying these things for the conditions. So, I mentioned it earlier, but one thing that I never get bored with when it comes to guiding and whatnot is like I just prepare a ton. So like this time of year, the last 2 months, pretty much every night or morning, I'm tying a bug or two for a fly or two for the day. Right. And it's funny to look at like how they change just with water levels and clarity and what river I'm going on and what section I'm on. So I'm tying pretty much for the conditions. And again, like we talked about, like every year is different. So the fly I used last year on this, day is not the same as this year. And you're just constantly evolving. Fly tying allows you to do that, right? It allows you to that's our one advantage we have over the fish is we can observe and we can change and we can come with a different approach the next day. But just pretty much Blaine Chocolate's game changer platform, right?
Yep.
So Blaine's a good friend of mine, great dude, great angler, great mind, especially at the Vice, just off the charts. But his game changer concept, we didn't know each other when we knew of each other, but we didn't know each other. Mm-hmm. But around the same time, I was tying a fly, working on a fly called this. It eventually became the Swing and D. The way that I fish it now, or the way that I tie it now, is totally, because of what I learned from Blaine. But the concept of the fly was there. It was, I guess an early swim fly. And then I met Blaine, and just the stuff just blew my mind. And that's where my fly tying and creativity really took off, was with right. The information and him showing me what's up. But yeah, I mean, the changers, like boxes of them, man. I'm always tinkering and changing. You're doing hybrids, you're doing combinations of things that you learned when the dredge flies were the thing, like, tip of the cap to like Russ Madden, Kelly, all those guys kind of gave us the template, the rubber legs on the flies. And now I'm always evolving and changing and blending, old, stuff that I learned from other people, obviously, but putting them in to apply to our rivers. So just the changer platform in general, I'm always tweaking that and whatnot, but like super low clear water, I would like to use something that's, has some translucency to it. Like Renzetti, our distribution, they make a brush called Translucy. I've been using that a ton. Blaine's got some products through Hairline that are like a translucent, body wrap. So when the water's super low and clear, I'm going tans, I'm going whites, I'm going maybe light olives. I'm a big fan of flies that I can see and my clients can see. If they can see it, they're going to be engaged and they're going to be entertained, right? So they're going to be more tuned into the fly. If they're just robot casting something that's boring,
right?
It's not going to really. It adds to the experience. So the game changer adds to the experience of the fishing, definitely. So like the low clear, I'm going small. I'm going 3 inches. But as as the water gets higher and muddier and dirtier, and the fish are in that, pre-spawn, just super aggressive, you can get crazy. You can get yellows, chartreuses, and then you'll vary the weights of the flies through materials or through lead wraps in the way of keels. Or if you need something really heavy, you put like build a tungsten bead into the head where you can't even see it. It's just hidden within the fly. But you use different materials, different style brushes. Brushes are all the rage these days. You can get them in every dang color, but unless you play with them and tie with them, you really need you really don't know what they do. So like a brush like Enrico Puglisi's crustaceous brush, like that brush is kind of airy. And if you use it for a head, it kind of has a rebounding effect where it just kind of kicks. And if you cut it and trim it the right way, it'll give you a wide, like wounded minnow. Whereas you could take a brush from R&D like the what's it called, sculpting brush, where it has more pass through, right? So the water doesn't push around it, but it passes through it. That's going to give you a more of a tight, natural bait fish, action to the fly in a lot of situations. If you guys haven't picked it up, Blaine's book, The Game Changer, right? He talks about the tapers, all that kind of stuff. That's all important. So there's some absolutely hideous game changer flies that I see out, posted, and like, I understand the guy's working on it. He's doing his thing. He's a new fly tire, but like, it ain't going to swim.
No,
it's going to look terrible.
That's and I'll put a link to the Blaine's book in the show notes as well. But talking about that, the Game Changer, the platform, really quick, just for somebody who maybe isn't familiar with it. What is it? What makes that unique over what was done before that?
Yeah, so I mean, back in the day, it was like you looked at like Russ Madden's Circus Peanut or some of the Gallup flies. They're all great. They're built for that type of environment where you're going down the river, you're bank shooting, boom, boom, boom. Machine gun fishing, where we're fishing slower currents. We're fishing, you need something just a little bit more, to kind of trigger these fish. And what it is, it's a series of spines, right? So Blaine had the idea of like looking at swim baits and things that were happening in the conventional end of things. And you break those plastic or, whatever hybrid rubber baits down, and they all have a spine of wire running through them, right? So they connect in various different ways depending on manufacturer, but the concept is there. It's like, this is it. This is like, why are we? I got a lot of inspiration when I first started by going to Bass Pro and Cabela's and looking at the the gear. Like, that's why reinvent the wheel? You already have they've laid the roadmap. You just got to adapt it with natural materials or synthetics. But anyways, the Game Changer, it could be a 2-hooked fly, it could be a single hooked fly. But you're going to use a series of shanks. It's now widely available from multiple companies, but the original company that kind of came out with the shanks through Blaine was Flyman. And you have a 10, you have a 15, you have a 20, you have a 25, and then they have a whole bunch of different sizes. But you make this fly into a swimming creature, and you get different actions and different attributes to the flies by using different materials. Do you want it to sink fast? Do you want it to sink slow? Do you want it to swim perfectly in line like a natural minnow? Do you want it to look like it's wounded? And you play with these materials, and it's arts and crafts for adults.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, it's cool. You got to play with it. And my program, my flies, they change a lot from year to year with new materials. And sometimes you want stuff that's bright and has a lot of pop to it. Sometimes you want to mute it down. So possibilities are endless. It's just a very fun template. And it's going to be expanded upon, no doubt. And it's going to the woolly bugger of 2000 and whatever it came out, 12, 11.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the woolly bugger. Does the woolly bugger still work out there? Or do you ever use like a woolly bugger type basic pattern like that?
I don't, I mean, I just don't. It's personal preference. Would it work? Hell yeah, it works. Yeah. Works everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most simple flies, it just goes out and catches. And if you can fish it with lead, you can fish it unweighted. It's just a simple rabbit strip leech.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. Exactly.
I want to feed my family. Give me a pack of black rabbit and some hooks. Let's go get them.
That's right. Make it easy. Well, I wanted to, before, we start to kind of wrap this up here, I was curious on, just casting. Do you have maybe a tip or two? I'm thinking, if somebody's casting these giant flies, that must be, especially for a new angler, how do you help that person cast the thing?
Yep. Obviously you got to build the basic cast before you try to get crazy and do other stuff. But, I've heard, we refer to it around here as gravity casting, or, like almost like a Belgian cast where you're coming underneath and you're over the top and the fly never stops moving. You're not going to come back and just hammer a hard back cast and just jam the brakes on and watch that rod tip just wobble and do its thing. So, the fly never stops moving. It's an elliptical, motion to the cast. And for those that are very, proficient in fly casting, it's pretty easy to pick up. But I always tell people when they're coming out here to fish with us, if you're going out and we're trying to catch trophy fish, you got to be able to cast off your backhand. You have to be proficient with the backhand cast. You have to be proficient with casting at various rod angles. It's super important. So practice. You're an archer, you're shooting arrows, you're a golfer, you're going to the driving range. If you're a fly fisherman and you can't get on the water multiple times a week, you need to have a rod set up that you can step out in the backyard or go to your local park and take it for a rip. But don't just work on your just basic, I learned this at the, Orvis 101 fly fishing school. You need to become a complete angler and learn different angles and whatnot. And with those shorter head lines, 33, 43 foot heads, you can zing them. You can really zing them when you get your timing down. And there's a lot of, there's a right tool for the job. You can find it.
Is that the key? You're kind of opening up your cast a little bit or is the line more of the key, just having the right line to cast those big flies?
Right line, right rod.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rod's a huge thing.
What rod do you guys like to go with there?
So I use like all my guiding rods are G Loomis IMX Pro 1 pieces.
Oh wow!
So I use the 1 piece 7 and 1 piece 8 a lot. 8 foot 10 inch. So having said that, there's an announcement coming on June 1st for a little project that we've been working on over the last couple of years, and it's finally going to get released to the wild. So
cool.
Stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you had coming, so that's good to hear. Well, let's just kind of wrap this up. I usually do the 222 just quickly to take us out of here, the top 2 tips, top 2 flies, top 2 resources. And we've kind of talked about a lot of this already, I think. But, again, if you had to pick 2 flies, what would be your go-to? And I know there's a lot of variation, and I don't know if you want to focus on, like we started at the start, the Huron in low water conditions. But what would you be going with, or even today?
Yeah, I would say two flies. Like for me, if going out chasing trophy fish, is going to be a Swinging D 2.0, which is one of my flies. Just it's a hybrid between the original Swinging D and the Game Changer. That'd be a fly that I can fish at various depths. I can put a keel on it. I can vary the length of the leader, and I could fish that fly up on the surface all the way down to say 4 feet. That's what we need in our rivers. The second would be Dahlberg diving frog. So like, a Dahlberg diver style head in a frog pattern that is going to be, a straight killer for big fish. So those two are my 2 flies. I would definitely say a frog and a Game Changer style Swinging D fly.
Gotcha. And on those frogs, are you fishing those different levels throughout the year? Is that something you always kind of have handy?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, but earliest I've ever seen them now is March 30th. That's crazy. I heard peepers on March 15th, and 2 weeks later, that's kind of my rule of thumb. You'll start getting them on frogs. Yeah, by the middle to the end of April, frogging is a go, and that'll go all the way till September, maybe even early October on warm years. And then the swim fly stuff, it's all water temp oriented. It's 40 degrees and up.
Gotcha.
And that's an option all the time. You just change the size of the fly.
Nice. All right. And a couple of tips. I know you've thrown out there some awesome ones already, but anything else you would throw out there? Maybe that person that's kind of new to the area.
Yeah. Number one is keep the fly out front. You got to keep it out front of the boat. If you want to get good and get consistent at this, don't, really pay attention to conditions. Conditions are everything. Just because a river's famous or, well known, or you like a stretch of water because it looks pretty or it's easy to get to, doesn't necessarily mean you need to be there that day. So intimate knowledge of flow rates, knowledge of, points in the river where maybe they receive, off-colored water, creek influences and whatnot, knowing, that from that creek down, when it rains like crazy, he's going to be blown out. But from that creek up's not, little things like that. But when it comes down to it, like you just need to be on it. You got to spend a ton of time on it. So, early season, we got to have a joke. It's like you're going early and you're in guide mode. And once you get it really rolling, it turns to God mode. And, it's, you have a really good plan and where the fish are going to be. And it's just a matter of the client executing. And you'll get the job done.
That's cool. How far on the cast does that person have to cast if they're coming on your boat? Is it like, are we talking about 30, 40 feet?
Exactly. Yeah. If you can pump out 30, 40 feet, overcasting is a big thing on our rivers. You get anglers out that are really proficient and they want to show you what they got.
Right.
And it's like, dude, I can, one thing that's unique about these waters is if even if you're not the greatest angler, if I can get you out 30 feet, sometimes you will do better than the guy that can throw 70 or 80 feet, just because you may listen and you may be able to dial in that shorter cast, and you're not overcasting and putting fish down that you don't see. Smallmouth bass, even in clear water, are extremely well camouflaged. And, they just look like from above. I've seen them on, drone footage and whatnot. They look like rocks.
Yeah.
That's cool. And, so overcasting is a big thing. And, as a guide, you really need to harness the angler and take their skill level. And even if it's really, really good and they got the bomb cast that they use and they go permit fishing or whatnot, you gotta harness that and keep them under control.
Right on. And and then sticking on this, the resources. It sounds like maybe you guys have some good resources. Anything else you would recommend that maybe isn't your own stuff that's out there that somebody could dig deeper into all this?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff out there. I think more is wading through and filtering through the bullshit.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Everybody's got an opinion these days. Everybody's wants that instant success, and it's just, I guess, use your network. And if you don't have one, try to align yourself with a good shop or good people that can kind of point you in the right direction when it comes to your travel or your gear selection, that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously, I'm a smallmouth guy. So when I want to go tarpon fishing or I want to go do something, I'm usually reaching out to people that know a lot about that. I'm not really going and searching, articles online written by some guy in North Dakota writing about permit fishing in Belize. It's like you got to go to the source. So just kind of wading through all the modern and finding the good stuff. When it comes to angling, this is something that I experienced firsthand. When I first started out, it's like, the Schultz Outfitters didn't become Schultz Outfitters because Mike Schultz. Schultz Outfitters became Schultz Outfitters because of the team. If you can take that and kind of build yourself a little network of anglers, people that will, obviously put their time in, but share information, and not only share information, but share truthful information. That's when people start making some real progress, when you have multiple eyes on the water and people that you trust and people that you can get good intel from. It's all about being at the right place at the right time, and controlling the controllables are pretty important. Cool. And that's kind of a little tip I'd give you. Build a little crew of people that you can trust.
Are you guys do you put out like a fishing report on your website or any of that stuff?
We don't.
Yeah,
we don't. It's pretty much, if you pay attention, if you look at our Instagram stories, the pictures that are going up on stories are all from that day.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see what's going on. Gotcha. I think, that's one thing in our industry that's kind of is lacking on some people's behalf, is just authenticity and real time information. Not a big fan of Throwback Thursdays.
Right.
Like, let's know what's happening now. I want to see what's happening now. You know, so I think that's your best judge of the conditions when you look at Schultz Outfitters, is look at what's going on the media, because that is what's happening that day.
Gotcha. So if you go to your Instagram, you're going to see some photos. Do you guys break down? Do you do much video, or just kind of like talk about flies and what's working in areas, or is this more just kind of pics of fish and stuff like that?
Yeah, just pics of fish. I mean, we'll give it up, but I mean, it all just comes back to, you got to go out and experience it and see it, and do it. And I can tell you pretty much everything except my car shuttle driver's number and where I'm floating that day. I'll tell you everything else. I don't care. But I think Larry Dahlberg said it best. If these people ask all these crazy questions sometimes, and you're like, man, I would never ask that question. Like, I just know that that's just kind of like the unwritten rule. You don't ask that stuff. But like, the best way to look at it is like, angling is all about like that sense of discovery, right? And like, that is when it finally clicks and you start putting things together and you put in the sweat equity. That's when you get the reward. It's not when you pay, X amount of dollars to go on a guide trip and Schultz puts you on a fish that he's knows there. That's cool. You got the picture and you have the experience, but like, if you really want to go out and earn it, that's it, the sense of discovery is what it's all about. And, what Larry says to these people is just like, hey, if I took that from you, I would feel pretty bad, that's the joy of angling. So, it's very true. And I think in this modern world of instant gratification and instant information and stuff, like there's still some organic stuff out there where you have to go out and actually put in the work and actually do it and experience it. And in the end, you'll be better off.
That's right. Yeah, I love that. I think that's an amazing way to leave this, because I think, you can't forget about that with all this Instagram stuff and everything. You can't forget the fact that literally the outdoors and the river and being curious and observant. And I mean, that's what it's all about, right? You could look at Instagram all day. But yeah, it's pretty funny that the world we're in. It's kind of, I mean, you guys have the Instagram thing. I mean, obviously you have a business, so you kind of have to have that. But if it wasn't for the business, would you be on social media at all?
Probably not. I would have a, private account that my family can go on and see pictures of my kids and that kind of stuff. But no, I mean, it's just, it's pretty wild. It's changed the world rapidly. And obviously, I don't feel that it's changed it for the better.
Not for the better. Not for the better. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it actually takes us out. I mean, it's interesting because we're on this podcast. This is obviously built on the space, but I totally agree. Right. I think that, it just takes us out. It just takes us away from the whole idea of what we're trying to do is to get away from the electronics. That's the goal.
No doubt.
That's the goal.
No doubt, man.
Cool. All right, Mike. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, obviously, we never can dig into everything, but I appreciate that. And going back to, you mentioned the June. So is that the biggest thing coming up where we can expect June 1st? Because by the time this goes out, this actually is going to be released probably after that point. So if you, any other hints you want to give us there, or are we just going to wait on this thing?
Yeah, we're going to wait on. I actually checked in with the boss man. He said, you got to hold up. So,
all right. So we're close.
June 1st, it's dropping. Check out your local G Loomis dealer, or check out Schultz Outfitters. Give us a call. We're kind of old school cool, where we don't have the massive e-com store where you actually have to call.
Oh, right.
You got to talk to a human that actually fishes. What a concept.
Yeah.
Huh? Everybody that works at the store is full-blown fish head, lives the lifestyle, is there for the right reasons. And, whether it's Corey or Greg Senyo or Jesse or Carter or Jack or Matt or whoever you talk to, or myself, you can be sure that guy has been on the water in the last few days and is on it and ties flies and understands. So, got a pretty amazing team. Tip my hat to those guys, and give us a shout.
Okay, we'll do it. And the number, we can just go to your website. Is there a good number they can call if somebody wanted to connect with you right now?
Yeah. 734-544-1761 is the shop. Team, TEAM, at SchultzOutfitters.com is the email address that gets monitored 24/7. So, if you guys, I'm the one that answers all the direct messages on IG. Hit me up. I'll give you my time and give you my honest opinion.
All right, Mike. Hey, thanks for all your time, and looking forward to keeping in touch with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Take care, bud.
So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes, all the links, and everything else we covered today, just head over to wetflyswing.com/229. That's 229. Please take a moment, if you can, and subscribe to the show. This helps others find the show and lets all the apps out there know that people are listening. Click that subscribe button, hammer that subscribe button, and show your support and help us find and help a few more anglers out there find a few more smallmouth bass. That would be amazing. that's pretty much it today. That's a wrap. That's all I have for you. I want to let you jump on to your next podcast. If you're like me, you have a few lined up and ready to go. So I appreciate you for hanging on to the very end and don't want to stop you from that next big podcast. If you get a chance, please check in with me on Instagram at WetFlySwing and just let me know how things are going and send me a DM. I'd love to hear, or an app mention of what podcast you're listening to other than this one. Give a shout out if it's this one, but I'm always interested in checking out new shows as well. So if you have something cool, it doesn't have to be fly fishing. I kind of listen to a lot of everything. So I would love to hear what you have going. Thanks again, and looking forward to checking in with you on the river or online.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.